Welcome back to the show, everybody. Well, more than 9 in 10 councils in the United Kingdom will be housing asylum seekers by the end of the year. That's according to Home Office documents. This means unemployed migrants will be living at taxpayers' expense in communities across the country, and most likely, by that stat, yours too. The number of local authorities housing migrants sat at 82% in the summer. That number has since risen and is now projected to hit 92% by the year's end. That's a 10% increase at least, though. That's the Express revealing on Sunday. And is it right that councils are required to house asylum seekers? Should asylum seekers be forced upon our communities? Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by Reform UK Council and Deputy Leader there, Darren Grimes, and academic researcher and author Dr. Reza Vidadi. Darren, I'd love to start with you on this because, of course, you are running a council yourself. Many people will be asking tonight, Darren, why do I have to pay for this? And why am I, who might be on a waiting list for a social home, going to be at the back of the queue?
Well, Alex, good to be with you. I couldn't agree more. If they are indeed expressing that sentiment, it's fundamentally wrong when your local authorities, which are struggling, even more so if you've got a whackery and walkery local government, but even if you've got a reform one, which is trying to trim the fat and cut the waste, we are still on the brink of bankruptcy because we're forced to carry the burden of the government's immigration failures without actually the funding or the consent, as well as the hammer blow of send costs, that's children with special educational needs, transport for them to get to and from school, and also the high needs block, which is children which may well have been expelled from school or can't be in mainstream schooling. Those costs that government has passed on to us and said you have to fund through ever higher taxes, well, we can't do that. We are at breaking point. Councils ultimately, Alex, in my opinion, should serve local taxpayers first. They shouldn't act as an overflow accommodation for the Home Office and their migrant madness that they're allowing to envelop the whole nation, putting our communities at risk, or indeed by passing on the buck on everything from the high needs children to adult social care and the reforms on the ICB, which is the care body that they're actually bringing about as a government. They're forcing those costs over to your local councils, and that's putting them at breaking point. We haven't got the ability to take on those who we will never receive council tax income from, because as you well know, Alex, these people, they're here at the taxpayers' leisure, right? They're not going to contribute to your local authority and your local area.
You know, Dr. Reza, what do you make of that? And Darren's got a good point. Our councils are at breaking points. Our housing associations some of them have waiting lists for over a decade in parts of London. So if you're a law-abiding citizen who desperately needs a home, you will not get that home before an asylum seeker will.
So I think we have to just clarify some things. The Home Office, central government, is responsible for housing the asylum seekers. Once the the application has been granted, then the situation moves where the council may get involved in housing them. But before that, it's the government that in 2019 signed a big contract with Serco, Mears Group, and Clear Spring Ready Homes, initially at 4.5 billion for 10 years. That's 2019. 7 years have passed, 6 years have passed. There's only 3-4 years left. That has now been revised at £15 billion contract. So the government in those 10 years could have invested that and built homes that the asylum seekers, when they enter, they could use these homes, and then once the application is accepted, they can go and work.
Dr. Reza, I totally appreciate that, but that is not the reality we're facing today. We are facing and staring down the barrel of councils and housing associations that are desperately trying to prioritise British people, but they will not be able to. In fact, I've been working on a case where there's 2 people who are actually living in a tent in a garden by the gift of someone in their local area because they can't get housing because the whole local association, the housing association, is prioritising asylum seekers. Why should British people be at the back of the queue?
Again, as you didn't let me finish what I was saying. It's not the asylum seekers that are getting these houses, it's who's allocating it to them. The government is signing contracts with big corporations that are making money out of it. Why is the government not investing it into councils so councils could build homes like we had 30, 40 years ago, council houses where British and non-British could use them continuously without it being sold off as Margaret Thatcher did? Why is not that being taken into account?
I'll pass that back to Darren.
Well, that's a complete nonsense, with the greatest possible respect allocated to it. Look, Right to Buy, Margaret Thatcher's Right to Buy programme allowed people like my mother to buy their council houses and have security over their own lives. What we're talking about here and now, you suggest there, your guest proffers the idea of us having a mass house building programme for migrants. Actually, I think many of them, in most cases, actually should be deported. I don't think they ought to be receiving a mass house building programme at a time when we have a chronic housing crisis. People aren't having children because of the fact they can't get a house big enough to allocate small young families. Councils are being told that actually they have no choice when it comes to homes with multiple occupancies, known as HMOs, to be forced upon them. You do mention Mia's Group there. Mia's Group are being given vast sums. You are right about that. But I have residents calling me, Alex, who say, Darren, and they call me in floods of tears, by the way, I've got a family, that's a very generous way of putting it, a house of 6 men, 6 foreign fellas that we know absolutely nothing about, moving in next door, and I'm absolutely terrified for my sons and daughters' welfare and safety. And you want to tell us that actually we should have a mass house building programme for these people. If Whitehall wants this policy, Whitehall should pay for it, not Durham, not Rotherham, not anywhere else. I think there is a disgraceful element here not being considered. GP appointments, school places, housing lists that you've mentioned, Alex, they're stretched beyond all belief. Every extra placement of some illegal with no right to be here adds real strain to communities already struggling with the contention of cuts or tax rises. That's the position we're in. Nobody voted for this. No one at all, Alex. It's anti-democratic and it's a disgrace to the British public.
I'll give you the final word, Dr. Reza. What do you make of Darren's comments there?
Well, I never said build the houses for the refugees or the asylum seekers. I said build the houses for the councils so that, again, people like your mother who benefited it 40 years ago when she bought their property, others who can also benefit for the 50s, 60s, 70s who benefited from having subsidized housing, British citizens, non-British citizens, whoever they are, whoever they're eligible to have access to. So the building of houses long-term helps fix those problems. It's not for the refugees. When I say build houses, it's for anyone who resides in the United Kingdom and anyone who's not legally in this country, applications accepted. That's a different matter for them to be deported. We're not talking about that. We're talking about short of housages. And if the council should provide, the council, by now, at the moment, the law says the council doesn't need to provide. It's the Home Secretary that needs to provide.
All right, look, we'll have this debate a little bit more often. Thank you both very much for coming on. Reform UK councillor